security forces across Israel have been clashing with protesters opposing the government's newly passed law to restrict the power of the country's judiciary. Demonstrators see it as a power grab by the Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, but he says the move was necessary to correct an imbalance of power. Our Middle East correspondent Tom Bateman reports, applause. Streets of Israel were soaked in anger moments after one of the most contested laws in the country's history was passed. Anti-government protesters were being blasted with water cannon, and the rage towards Mr. Netanyahu or Bibi was boiling over. This is my country and baby not supposed to be. We need to be here. I starve in the army, I have 3 little boys and I want to continue to stay in my country. And outside the Israeli parliament, Israeli democracy that would curtail executive power, and so the piece of legislation that just went through with a search essentially removed the court's ability to review primarily appointments that Netanyahu would like to make in the future, for example to remove the current Attorney General, and to replace someone who is more convenient to him, perhaps someone who can assist him in extricating himself from the legal troubles that he is in. I think that we've reached a point where Netanyahu's personal political fortunes are being put ahead of everything else in Israel. Hear the view that this is what people voted for and that's why they're doing it, or is this something that could come unstuck with a legal challenge? Well, this is not what the people of Israel have voted. Try to alleviate the incredibly high tensions in the countries, but that did not happen, and that I think has been a real shock to many Israelis, and we can see that being manifested in the protests that are happening all around the country, but also in the dire warnings that the Israeli government is receiving from military personnel, from economists, from high-tech entrepreneurs, that Netanyahu is really dividing Israel, causing toxic polarization and really endangering the social fabric and the stability of the country. So this has been a real talk. Can you explain what the government is actually trying to do, why it's not allowing as it were the judiciaries were to be final? Well, what the government is trying to do is to remove the precious few checks and balances that exist. The mood is one of deepening crisis. There is escalating violence in the region, the absence of any political horizon in the wider conflict, and Israel's occupation of the Palestinian territories. Now anti-government dissent is spreading into the security establishment, and Israel's internal divisions have rarely felt this severe. Tom Bateman, BBC News, Jerusalem. Fraught situation with concerns spreading there. Well, I've been speaking to Professor Amichai Morgan, visiting fellow in Israel studies at Stanford University in California. I asked him how damaging this all is for Mr. Netanyahu's government. Extremely damaging. Israelis have been protesting for the last 6 months, but there was hope that at the very last moment, as is typical of Netanyahu, he would seek to reach some kind of compromise. And showdown today, both they said was a red line, these protesters, and now they're trying to prove it. The security forces using a van. These are unprecedented scenes. The Israeli leader has just had surgery to fit a pacemaker. He appeared amid the increasingly fraught atmosphere. The opposition shouted shame as the critical vote neared, and they walked out claiming historic changes were being rammed through, opening a door to dictatorship. There is no prime minister in Israel. Netanyahu has become a puppet on the strings of messianic extremists. But tonight Mr. Netanyahu dismissed his critics. Today we carried out a required democratic move. The move was aimed at restoring a degree of balance between the branches of government which we had for 50 years, music, but with the protests set to intensify. The